Okay, here's our second video on the African kingdoms, the ancient African kingdoms, and we're talking the empire, not the emperor, the empire of Mali. So here is a map of Mali, ancient Mali. So over here, as we remember from the last video when we talked about the fall of Ghana, we talked about the Almoravids who lived in present-day Morocco within this area as they came down and they disrupted Ghana. They didn't conquer Ghana. They disrupted a lot of the city-states of Ghana, or the regions of Ghana. And then what happened is there was many families, many tribes within this area, and over a long period of time, eventually the tribes would form into Mali, with the capital right here of Timbuktu. So again, just to review that, so the Almoravids coming down from the south, they had a jihad, and a jihad is a holy war. It's a Muslim holy war. So they had a jihad against Ghana. And though they didn't conquer Ghana in itself, they did cause a lot of interruptions within the tribes of Ghana. So it's a very complicated story, and the only information we're getting is from the Arab merchants that from this area that told the story of the fall of Ghana. So just so we understand now, so the Almoravids came into Ghana and they disrupted Ghana, but they didn't succeed in conquering the country, but they did succeed in converting a lot of the family tribes into Islam. And from these tribes, after the fall of Ghana, there was a power play. In other words, each tribe was fighting to control the new territory, and then one family would eventually control it. So with Mali as the new kingdom, one of its kings, one of its Mansa is king. So Mansa Musa, or King Musa, or Musa Kieta, there's other terms like Kankau Musa, all these are Mansa Musa. He also had another appellation, another title. He was the Lord of the Mines. Of course, we're talking about the gold and salt mines of Wangara. Not Ouagadougou, which was a term for Ghana. So you can call Mansa Musa the Lord of the Mines. He's the most famous ruler of Mali. A lot of the information, again, that we get about Mansa Musa comes from the Arab traders. Of course, there's one famous pilgrimage that he had to Mecca. Mansa Musa was Islamic. He was a Muslim. And he did make a Hajj, and a Hajj is a pilgrimage to Mecca. And he did it in 1324. And on his way, he stopped in Egypt. So this is where the myth, which could be true, Mansa Musa carried with him a caravan of about 60,000 people, 12,000 which were slaves. And everyone, those 12,000 slaves all carried at least 4 pounds of gold each. He had an immense amount of gold with him. And of course the myth goes that he ended up in Egypt and bankrupted the Egyptian economy based on inflation. So here he is, he's overpaying at bazaars, he's tipping with gold dust, he's throwing gold away. He is creating a hyperinflation. When there's too much money in the economy, you get inflation, and that's what he did. He caused hyperinflation. And a lot of people say that it really destroyed the economy of Egypt for a good 25 years or more. So in other words, what he basically did is he pumped about $1.5 billion, and if we think about modern money, into Egypt, creating this hyperinflation. This is a famous map we have, the Catalan. This is the map, a Catalan map of Europe, and we have, in one of them you can see Mansa Musa depicted here with his gold. Okay, here's a picture of a famous temple in Mali, ancient temple, it's still there. The ruins of it are still here. This is Djinguedaber. Now here we see it right here, an old map showing Djinguedaber. And after 25 years, Mansa Musa, he would die in 1337, in the 14th century, a time when Europe was basically coming out of their, well, not dark ages, but within their middle ages, they were getting into the Italian Renaissance. So you see people like Dante would have been familiar, perhaps, of Mansa Musa. Dante, who created the Divine Comedy with the Inferno, the Paradiso, the Purgatorio, and of course Inferno. So that was Dante. Also, we have some famous artists like Boccaccio. So Italy at this time, within the 1300s, would be entering its Renaissance. Okay, so we can't really talk about Mansa Musa without mentioning Ibn Battuta. Now, Ibn Battuta was the most widely traveled person in the Middle Ages. If we think of Europeans, think of Marco Polo as being a well-traveled individual, but Ibn Battuta would have had much more miles put on than Marco Polo. And the funny thing is, Marco Polo died in 1324, so here we have 1325. This is when Ibn Battuta set out on his Hajj to Mecca, a pilgrimage to Mecca. And from there, if we can look at this map, get it clearer, he sets out for Morocco. He was Moroccan, and this is after the Almoravids. The Almoravids would have been defeated, or probably around the 1200s, so we're looking here now in the 1300s. So he was from Morocco, in Tangier, that's where he was born, and he set out, first he sets out, and he goes through Egypt, and he goes on his pilgrimage to Mecca. And he had other journeys, of course. He went to Kenya and other parts of Saudi Arabia today. He went into the Middle East. And of course he went into Mali, where we have a lot of accounts of his travels to meeting Mansa Musa. And within his travels, he traveled 29 years. 29 years of travel. And we're talking about in the Middle Age, in the 1300s here, so this is an enormous feat. Of course, Marco Polo went all the way to China, the Mongol Empire, where he would have met Kublai Khan. And of course, he was also there with his brothers. So Marco Polo in the Middle Ages is the most widely known traveler in the Western world. But again, Ibn Battuta would have had much more miles traveled than Marco Polo. But again, in the Western world, Ibn Battuta is not well known. But if you ever get a chance to read his journals, his travel journals, it's very interesting stuff, very enlightenment, a lot of enlightenment we can find about the Arab world and the Arab merchants. And again, remember, most of the information we get from Mali and Mansa Musa comes from these Arab merchants and Ibn Battuta. Of course, there is some doubt of whether Ibn Battuta actually met Mansa Musa, because Mansa Musa died in 1337, and he may have, or 1336, and he may have gotten to Mali after that, but he heard much about Mansa Musa. Of course, everybody heard about Mansa Musa, especially what he did to Egypt. And again, if you remember what we talked about, is he basically bankrupted Egypt because he made gold worthless. When you have so much gold, remember, gold is worth money because of its rarity. It's a precious metal that is rare. So when there's so much of it, when there's too much gold, it becomes worthless. So, of course, Ibn Battuta would have known about Mansa Musa, and that was probably one of the reasons why he went to Mali. But again, there were many reasons to go to Mali because of the gold and of the salt trade, which brought in many commodities, as we said in the previous video, like cola nuts, honey, animal skins, and of course, the infamous slave trade. Now, Mansa Musa would have died, when Mansa Musa died, his son took over. His son was Maghan I. Oops, there we go. I'll just write his name here. Maghan. And again, Maghan, I might have mentioned this, Maghan was not a great ruler compared to Mansa Musa. He was not politically savvy as his father. He wasn't able to hold on to the empire, and it eventually would collapse. It would collapse from Songhai. Songhai was one of the provinces of Mali, and it gained much power after Mansa Musa's death. And we'll talk about Songhai in the next video.